Hello, friends. Africa James here, 5-year expat in Africa. So, why do I call myself Africa James? Well, my middle name is James, and I'm in Africa, so you figure it out, wizard. You know, when I first came here, I didn't really like it so much. And, for the longest time, pretty much my first 4 years here in Uganda. By the way, guys, I've also lived in Kenya. Before I lived in Uganda, I lived in Kenya. And before that, my very first time I came to Africa, I just came to visit Ghana. And if I had based my first impression of Africa and used that to make a decision of whether or not to come to Africa again, I would have never come again. But somehow I gave it another chance because the next time I came to Africa, so in case you don't know the geography, Ghana is on the western side of Africa. Now, the second time I came to Africa, I said, well, let me see what East Africa is like. And so that's what brought me to Kenya. And just a little backstory on my life. Before that, I was living in Asia for about 20 years, living in Asia. And that's where I spent most of my adult life, and I worked. Specifically, I lived in Japan, and my work life was very hectic, and there was a lot of stress. I don't know if you know much about Japanese society, but people there are just so focused on work, and there's just so much pressure in that society. And I just reached my limit, and I had never been to Kenya before. All I knew about Africa was Ghana. Didn't have the best experience there. I'll talk about that in another video. But I'm like, fuck it. Let's just give it a shot. And I've been to about 25 countries in the world. I'm not so well traveled, but Kenya ended up being, my favorite country I've been to so far. That and the Philippines are my two favorites. But for various reasons, I ended up here in Uganda. So my first 4 years, I didn't really enjoy that much. And it's because of that I didn't really learn the language. I wasn't invested in a life here. I just was always thinking about how I could get out of here, honestly. So of course I didn't try to learn the language, and I didn't invest myself in other ways. But that bad opinion I had of Uganda was, I the whole time I really wanted to give it a chance. And I stayed in this one village, and the people were just really nasty. Just really unwelcoming, extremely xenophobic. I'll give you an example. So the first day I went to this village was the day I went because a friend, well, let's put friend in quotes. I'll tell you why in a second. This friend was showing me a house because, when I flew into Uganda, I didn't know anybody. So for the first 3 weeks, I was staying in a hotel in Kampala while I was looking for a house to rent. So this friend told me there was a house. And so we went out there one day, and she said, oh yeah, I found this house. It's furnished. And the rent is only 1 million UGX. That's 1 million shillings a month, which that's like, I can't do the conversion. It's like around $260, something like that, which at the time I thought was cheap, And it was a small house, but it was furnished. So the first day we go to this village, there's what do they call it? It's a trading center, they call it. It's a trading center where some vegetable stands, maybe a little butcher who's in a little tiny wooden hut with carcasses hanging from hooks. You got your local ladies out there selling produce, beans, rice. There's not like, if you're from the West, like Europe, America, Australia, like there there are a few supermarkets. You'll find them in the big city Kampala, and maybe scattered in some sub big cities, but for the most part, people don't use supermarkets here. And this place wasn't near any supermarkets. So, people here, they just go to these little huts and they buy vegetables at this one, meat at this one, rice at this one. It's like that. I'm serious. If you're from the West and you come here to like a village, you won't know what is going on. You're gonna need help. You won't know how to buy things. You won't know how much to pay for things. It's a big cultural hurdle. So the first day, I'm going with this local girl who was helping me, this friend, and we were just checking out the trading center, and we walked by these boda guys. A boda guy is a guy who gives people rides on his motorcycle, and they kind of collect at these places called stages. So you go to a stage to find a boda, you tell them where you want to go, you negotiate the price. Anyways, we're walking past a group of like 7 boda guys, and I'm walking by with this friend, and we were just friends. She wasn't a girlfriend, we weren't dating, there wasn't a romantic connection, literally just a friend. We walked by this group of boda guys, and they get off their motorcycles and they just like start making all these monkey gestures and like pumping, like 2 people having sex, and they're like laughing and joking around, and it was like so retarded. Like it was like juvenile retarded behavior. It was it was ridiculous. It was so stupid it was funny, actually. But that was just a small taste of what my life was going to be like for the next 4 years. So now, why did I call her a friend in quotes? Well, when I first came to Uganda, I didn't know jack shit about anything. And I thought renting a house for $268 was a good deal. Well, after spending some time in Uganda, I learned that the most I should have paid for that place was probably around $100, maybe $120. So what I'm guessing is she made a deal with the landlord, and she probably got a lot of money out of it. So they were very happy to charge me 2-3 times what the rent should have been, and I rented that place for a year. Once I caught on to things, I found a house that was 3 times larger and half the price. And the people in that village were, like I said, very unwelcoming, very hostile. I had a very pure, soft, and innocent heart when I came to East Africa. And one thing that really disturbed me, and still disturbs me to this day, is seeing these village dogs, which is okay when they're healthy, and they're okay. Looks like they're getting enough food. And I don't know, obviously they're domesticated, but most of them are feral, which means I think there's a word for it where a dog is domesticated, but it's feral. I can't remember the word, but they're in that state. So they're afraid of most people. But they just kind of hang on the outskirts of the trading centers to try to scavenge for food. So it's okay when they're healthy, but then you see the ones that aren't healthy. They're sick, or, they're missing a limb, or they're limping, or they look terrible. And I have a soft heart for these dogs. But people here, man, like, I kind of get it. If you grew up seeing that all the time, you wouldn't think twice about it. But, if you're somebody who comes from the West, like, you see that, and it's just fucking horrifying, So, before long, I had 6 of these dogs. I'm loving them and taking care of them, nursing them back to health, getting them medical attention, feeding them. And man, that just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of people felt like, hey, why would you spend money on dogs? You know, I'd go out, I'd walk with them every night. And those were, you know, despite the fact that I really hated that place, that was my only solace in my life at that time, was to go on my night walks through the jungle with my dogs. And our walks would often go around the perimeter of Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is a huge, it's the largest lake in Africa. And that was my only solace, really. I felt, because the people were so unwelcoming and xenophobic, which I haven't even gotten into those stories yet, but because they were that way, my only time of peace in the day was when I was with my dogs out on these jungle walks. I really felt like centered. Sometimes I'd be walking out there under a full moon. And you gotta, like, if you're from the West, I gotta tell you something. There's no fucking streetlights out there. You know, you go out there at night and it's pitch black. Like, you can barely see your hand in front of your face. That's how dark it is out there. And, you know, think of a place. Think about, like, if you're from the West, like from America or Europe, for example. Think of a time you went camping. Like, that's what the whole fucking place is like. It's just trees, dirt roads. It's just jungle canopy. That's it, man. Lots of nature. It's wonderful, but it's, you know, it's tough living out here. And on some nights there would be a full moon, and it would be so beautiful because you could see the moonlight would break through the canopy of the jungle and kind of light the way for me. Or I'd see it, what's it called, a moon glade over the lake, which was beautiful. Yeah, and you can't talk to a dog. You know, you can't talk to a dog. And I say that, you know, that time, that like I would walk them at night, and that was the most consoling, peaceful part of my day. Yeah, and you can't talk to a dog, but experiencing that with them, and knowing that I had them and they had me, it was a special experience, and it bonded us very strongly. And that, you know, that this is a time in my life I'll never forget. You go through tough times. You might go through tough times in your life, isolation, times when you don't have any friends, no one you can rely on. And you know, you'll think back to just this one little sweet, simple memory you have, and it's something special. One thing that just, man, boiled my blood is, you know, I love these dogs, you know, because I had nobody, and I felt so isolated by these people. They were just really made me feel like shit. And one thing that just infuriated me is sometimes I'd be walking out at night and people would pick up stones and throw them at my dogs. And trust me, guys, it took every ounce of self-discipline not to kick their ass, you know, not to get in a fight. There was one night that a guy he's another boda driver. He just thought it would be funny to try to run over one of my dogs. And I mean, this happened several times, but on this specific night, I think I controlled my anger pretty well, but I escalated it by, you know, after he parked his motorcycle, I went up to him and I said, "Hey man, what do you think you're doing?" And I hit him on his chest with the back of my hand, not in a way to physically hurt him, but, you know, just kind of a way to assert myself. And he picked up a brick. You know, a little fucking pussy. Wasn't going to fight with his hands. Picked up a brick. And I just said, look, man, like, how would you feel if I did that to your children? You know? And what did I do to you? All I'm saying is just respect. That's all. You respect me, I respect you. It's that easy. And I'm saying this to him, and then he's like, I guess he was cussing at me in their local language. And by this point, there's like 20 people standing around us in a circle, you know. For them, it's entertaining. And they start laughing. And I realized they were laughing at him because he couldn't speak English to me. And then he felt humiliated. And I walked away. But yeah, I mean, that was a pretty heated and tense situation that could have gone very bad. Like I've said in previous videos, I would hear rumors about myself that weren't true. During COVID, they called me COVID. Like, they didn't call me by my name, because most people in that village knew my name. They would just call me COVID. Hey, how you doing today, COVID? Like, isn't that just such a dick thing to do? Like, how can you just like walk by somebody on the road and call them such a, you know, a name? And who knows? I mean, who knows what I didn't get? Because a lot of times they would say things in their local language, you know. But of course I didn't understand. I was going to meet a girl one day, and she just canceled at the last minute. And I didn't think much of it because, you know, women can be flaky, whatever. It's part of life. It's part of dating. A year later, it's funny, but a year later, she contacted me again. And she said, I'm sorry about that day, but when I got to the stage, you know, that you told me to go to, you know, a stage is where all the boda drivers hang out and wait for people to come get rides. She said, when I arrived at the stage, they told me that you have AIDS. And so I left. You know, my only reference to living in Africa at this point was my time living in Kenya. Now, when I lived in Kenya, I'd go out on my evening walks by myself, and almost every night somebody would come up and befriend me and want to walk with me, talk with me. Often people would invite me to their houses, and I'd meet their families, and they'd give me dinner. Those Kenyans were so amazingly friendly and inviting. And I just assumed that if I went to the neighboring country, Uganda, that I would be treated a similar way. But not once did anybody invite me to their house, invite me to have dinner with them. The people in that area, they just, you know, they were rumor mongers, they were backbiters. And if they did befriend me, it was more like, what can we get out of him? You know, maybe he'll give us some money. They might ask me for money for a loan or some business idea they had. But I never got the feeling that anybody was offering any sort of true friendship. And you've got to remember that I went through 4 years of this. And the whole time I was thinking, now, is it like this all over Uganda? Is this just how Ugandan people are? I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to think that. And I thought, I wonder what it would be like if I lived in a different town or a different part of Uganda. Would I have a different experience? Well, I learned. And, you know, this all took place, you know, maybe 6 months ago. I moved out of that area finally. And now I'm in a place, and I've had a completely opposite experience. You know, again, I'm in a small town, but already most people know my names. Every time I go out, people want to talk to me. They're very friendly, very welcoming. There's this one shop I go to get my dinner most nights, or I can go there to have drinks. People buy me drinks. People give me food sometimes. Sometimes the local boda guys will give me a free ride somewhere. And I'm just fucking blown away. It's like that shit never happened to me in this other village I was living in. And now I have some motivation to learn Luganda. And I've learned more Luganda in the past 6 months than I did during my first 4 years here in Uganda. And, I had such a bad impression from all of my experiences. But now I'm seeing things a little bit differently. And I don't know. Maybe you can relate to this story. Maybe you've lived overseas as an expat and you've had a similar experience with the xenophobia, the hatred, the jealousy, the backbiting, the fake friendships. The whole country might be like that. But you could try moving to a different place and you might have a different experience. I'm glad that I did. When I moved, I expected to face the same challenges, honestly. I really did. But now it's like sometimes it's even annoying because sometimes I'll go out and I just want to get something really fast and come back home. And I'm introverted, by the way. But I can't, because every time I go out, somebody wants to talk to me and have a conversation, a friendly conversation. And unlike the last place I lived, they're not asking me for a loan. They're not talking to me about money. It's just a friendly conversation. Hey man, how you doing? Come drink with us. We'll buy you a drink. So I'm really happy things have turned around. And I was almost at the point of giving up on Africa, but for the longest time while I was living through those hard times here in Uganda, I was just dreaming of going back to Kenya, and I still love Kenya, and I still am planning to go back there someday. But I'm glad things have turned around, and I think from here on out, Uganda will be a part of my future to some degree. Before there wasn't that possibility. Anyways, guys, kind of rambling on here, but thanks for listening to my story. And that's just a little bit of insight to my life here in East Africa. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to hear even more personal stories, I have over 1,500 videos archived on my Patreon of my 20 years in Asia and my past 5 years here in Africa. So if you found any value in today's video and you enjoyed it, feel free to leave me a super thanks, or you can join me on Patreon. Or if not any of those, I'll see you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. All right, guys, peace out.